Hi, Elena is here, and today I'm delighted to speak with Victoria Z. Daly, Emmy Award-winning story editor, producer, playwright, and script consultant. Victoria has won a regional Emmy Award in the San Francisco, Northern California region as story editor and producer of 3 Seconds in October, the shooting of Andy Lopez. A few monologues written by Victoria are included in the Best Women's Stage Monologues, which is coming out this year in Smith & Krause. She's the founder and executive director of the Ninth Floor, a collaborative of award-winning writers and actors, now virtual. Welcome, Vicky.
Hi, Elena. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, and thank you so much for sharing this rainy afternoon with me. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, so let's jump into something exciting. I like stories. So I want to hear the story about your experience in contributing into such very heartbreaking story about shooting of Andy Lopez.
Well, it's an interesting story. It's not a standard story because the producer and director and sort of person who came up with this idea was out in California in Sonoma. Was his happened basically in his backyard, and he decided, he's made other films before, but he decided he wanted to make a film about not just the shooting, but about the community response. Mm-hmm. The judicial response and the response of the sheriff's office. And he began shooting it while it was happening. And so we actually worked on this film for 7 years because he didn't really know what the upshot was going to be of whether the family was going to get justice, whether the community was going to get justice, whether it was going to go to the higher courts, which it did. It ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court. And he was there, able to shoot. He actually had permission to go into court in California and shoot, which is very unusual. And so what I was doing with him all that time, he's a friend of mine, and he kept sending me pieces of the film, and I kept responding, giving him my kind of story consulting point of view about things, like what story are you telling and why are you telling it and who's the protagonist. And it took 7 years because the story was still unfolding, and I kept working with him on the script, and ultimately it got to and he was also working on it, I should say, in collaboration with people who've worked at 60 Minutes. I mean, many people felt very passionate about the story, which is about the shooting of a 13-year-old Latino boy who was returning a toy gun to a friend and was shot in the space of 3 seconds by a deputy sheriff in Sonoma County. And many people felt strongly about the story. And so I was going along with it in real time as he was, and kind of guiding him. And finally it kind of coalesced, the storytelling kind of coalesced, which is what my part of it was, essentially. I mean, I've worked on the marketing as well. And it had the story evoked a lot of community passion. Ultimately, it went to PBS because PBS, the local PBS station, helped fund it. So it went on to local PBS. It went national, and it received a regional Emmy, which I feel very gratified about, because what I realized in the course of going through the Emmy process is that the people who judge the regional Emmys do not live in the region where the film was shown. Mm-hmm. So people from other parts of the country judged the film and found it deserving of an Emmy. So it was really a labor of love on the part of everybody who worked on it. It was, everybody who participated really did it simply because they felt very strongly about the story. And then lo and behold, we won an Emmy, which was the least, in a way, the least important part of it. Only important in that it gets the film and what's in the film presumably more attention. So it couldn't have been more surprising that it it happened that way, because I, as somebody who do script consulting, put the same kind of attention and thought into whoever I'm working with. And mostly you kind of toil in the, you know, privately. And then this turned into something that ended up being much bigger than any of us, which is very gratifying, but still doesn't make, I mean, we all wish that we didn't have a reason to have made that film.
Thank you so much for your work in contributing into unfolding the truth.
Well, thank you. It was a group effort for sure.
Yeah, yes. Well, thank you for being a part of this. So, and you wrote the book, Raw and Other Short Plays. Tell us more about this collection and how your readers can order this and other books that you wrote.
So Raw and Other Short Plays is a collection of 7 of my short plays, all which have been done all over the country, and even in Russia, and which have kind of won awards all over the place. And they're basically a collection of, I mean, if you read the book, then you'll have some idea of my sensibility, which is, I guess I always say my ideal sweet spot for my own writing is funny and awful. So if something can be, not all of them are that way, but that often they have a moment at least of that. And I like things that are a little excruciating, that are funny, but kind of excruciating, and that show human flaw, show human weakness. What I write primarily about is about human connection, about whether that exists, how it exists, why people hurt each other, because humans constantly puzzle me. And which is great for sourcing material for your work, because I'm never going to have the answer. So it's a collection of 7 of the plays that have been done all over, including one that's in theory unproducible, has won some awards for being unproducible. That's the one that was actually won an international award in Russia and has been done in Russia. But it has also been done. It had actually been produced at the New Short Play Festival in New York, which is how I met you, not through that play, but through that organization.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So it's and they're all individual. They're meant to be plays that could be done as an entire evening, or can be cherry picked and done, you know, one at a time in a short play festival. And you asked, excuse me, where you can find it. You can find it on my publisher site, which is nextstagepress.com. And it will soon, for those of you who are in New York, it will be available next week, starting next week at the Drama Bookshop.
Amazing.
I'm thrilled about.
Congratulations. This is great, great, great. Yes. So I'll include the link to that website as well. And speaking of funny and awful as a characteristic of your writing style, I remember, because I worked in, I was cast in one of your plays on the Cross Bronx, which I'm very attached to. It was produced on New York stage in 2019, I believe, right before the pandemic, in the beginning of 2019, I think. And and that's the style. Yes, that's what you pursue in your writing. And it's dynamic, it's sad, it's very lifelike, life-related, realistic, you know, like relates to the people who watch it. I like to ask you, how do you write your stories? Do you use a real life as a base for your stories, or imagination, or both?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And I should say, by the way, you were in the very first production of that play, which is now in the applause She Persisted book called it's called She Persisted, 10-minute plays, all written by women who are part of a group called Honor Roll, which is all playwrights who are age 40 plus. And the excuse me, and the play has since been done on 4 continents, but you were the very first.
Oh wow.
Yes. So my first and very close to my heart. And there's and I should add, to give you there is the most beautiful photo of you on my website. I don't know if you saw that on the page where I talk about what I write about. There's a photo of you and your scene partner and
Tony De Palma. Yes, I saw that picture.
For him. You're reaching for him. So I should say the story is that Kate is pregnant and she's in the back of a police car, and the cop who's taking care of her is a rookie, and he's got to get to her to the hospital, but she doesn't want to go. And so there's a photo of you reaching towards him like this, and he's going like that.
Now giving a birth. I'm a woman of labor.
Like, and he's got gloves on. He's got rubber gloves on. But it's actually a beautiful photo, and it's very, I think, illustrative of what I was saying about people. Can they connect? Can they not connect? But anyway, in answer to your question about how I come up with ideas, I mean, sometimes they come up because, in all honesty, they've come up in school where I've been given an assignment. They come up because there's something that I'm burning to explore. You ask about real life versus imagination.
Imagination.
Well, nothing is absolutely real life, because it wouldn't make a good drama, right? It wouldn't follow an arc. It wouldn't be tight enough. But so there are elements, like if you look in Raw and other short plays, there are some. I give you a little game. If you read it, to guess what's actually pulled from my real life and what isn't. There are a few things that are. Most of it isn't, but there are a few things that are. And I think it's very difficult to pull apart what's your life and what's your imagination, because there are characters maybe that you might want to write, that I feel that I know very well from real life. But then I would say what's really pulled from my real life are the things that I'm really interested in. The things that as we were saying, the things that I have questions about that can't be answered. That is in every single play that I write. And that's when I'm working with script consulting clients. That's what I'm trying to tease out of them too. Like, what do you feel passionate about? So every single play has something that I feel passionate about in it. But then, like, have I ever been pregnant in a car on the Cross Bronx Expressway in a cop car? Hardly. So that's a situation. I don't even remember how. I mean, I remember exactly where I came up with that idea, but I cannot tell you why. I just knew that for some reason it was an image that came to me. So sometimes it can be a situation, it can be an image, it can be a feeling that I'm interested in exploring. It could be a political situation. There are some plays in that book that have a political component to them. There's a play about abortion bans. There's a play about climate change. So it's always a mixture. So some things might actually be drawn from something that happened to me in real life. More often than not, they're not. But what people say, how they feel, the things that go on underneath are very much things that I'm familiar with, that I might be struggling with myself, that I'm looking at other people and thinking, oh, they're struggling with that. So very often the underlying, the subtext is very personal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if that
It absolutely does answer my question. So I think that it makes sense only to write something that resonates with you, your experience that touches your heart, because this is the only way to touch the reader.
Well, this is what I
If you
think.
don't, if you care, they care, right?
Yes, it needs to be something that you really, I feel that you really need to dig out. The harder it is for you to actually tease out why you're writing something can actually be where the gold is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because and the place where you're stopping yourself can be where the gold is. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you're internally don't want to go to that reason, that's the actual reason that you're writing the play, if that makes sense. If you can get through there and ask yourself what's really going on internally. And I do get, I mean, I have to say that the not to toot my horn, but the feedback that I get when people talk to me about what draws them to my plays, that often say because they're very open-hearted, I guess is the word, that they have a lot of emotion in them. And that, not that I'm like that at all, you know.
This is beauty about your work, that emotional emotional palette. Okay. So when I played on the Cross Bronx, I felt like from being desperate up to being happy and released. I mean, like that huge a palette of human emotions. You know, from hatred to love, of having a baby, from bullying at that rookie police officer to basically just being grateful to him. That was a palette of incredible emotions that a human can experience.
That's what I'm interested in. That's really what I'm interested in. Although I'm interested, I mean, I'm really, really fascinated by craft, because you can't just be interested in how people connect and interested in feelings without having a vessel to put it in. Right. Yeah. And so I'm endlessly fascinated by craft, and I'm endlessly fascinated by what you can put on a stage and why you put it on a stage, and and for me, also, particularly because of my background is in physical theater, I'm very interested in stage pictures and what I'm asking actors to do, like what kind of physical actions they can take, what kind of stage pictures they make with each other. And I'm also very interested in just what's possible on a stage, like what are the theatrical elements. I love theatricality. Because my feeling is, what's the point of writing a play if you're not going to use the elements that are available to you on a stage, which are not the same elements that are available in a film or a TV show.
And this refers, what you mentioned, it refers me to your acting background. So you performed on stage as an actress, as a performer, and for example, you perform in Commedia dell'arte in Paris. So tell us more about this experience and how, and about your journey from being an actor to becoming a playwright.
Oh, wow. It's, I could be here all afternoon, but I'll see if I can make it. I'll see if I can make it short. So I went to, I'll start way back to when I was 16 years old. And I went to Paris for the first time with my mother. My grandfather lived in Paris, and I went to see him. And I was my first time in Paris. And I went to see Marcel Marceau. And I was in the audience to see him. And even though I had been in plays when I was a little kid, but then I had stopped, and I saw him on that stage, and I said, someday I'm going to come back here and I'm going to do that. And this came out of nowhere. Like, I just had this feeling that I should be doing that. And so cut to when I had just graduated from college, and I was accepted at the very last minute to go to the Lecoq School in Paris. And so I had about like 10 days to pack up all my things and move to Paris. This is in the days when there was no internet, so it was very exotic. It was very like, we're really going to a foreign place. And I ended up going to the it's called the École Jacques Lecoq. Jacques Lecoq was the founder and the principal, you know, the genius behind it. And what I discovered was that I was going to a place that was not about doing, you know, whiteface mime. Like he was like, Marceau's done that, don't do that. But what he did was he introduced us to physical theater. So it was his version of mime, which was basically just acting, mask, movement, styles like clown, commedia, with Greek tragedy. A clown was the hardest thing, so you didn't do it until the very end of the second year. And then what we did was, back then it wasn't called devised theater, but that's what it was, because we would create theater in groups. And so I think that was the origins of my writing, although I didn't know it. And then I worked with people who came out of the same training, and we created shows together and we went to the Edinburgh Festival. And then I came back with one of my partners and came to New York, and we performed doing clown. And the clown, for those of you who hate clowns, it was not, you know, white-faced clown and circus clown. It was what's it's called red nose clown, and very character-based. And ultimately, I decided that I was going to go off and do some other things. I really didn't have the training to be doing scene work. That was not my training. My training was I write all my own things. And I went into publishing because I was always interested in writing. I ended up going to business school and getting an MBA, but then I went back and worked at ABC and other media companies, and finally just kind of threw it all over and said, I'm starting all over again, because all I really ever want to do is be a creative person. And so I ended up.
I'm glad you made this decision. I'm glad we have you.
Oh, thank you. But you know, it's kind of crazy, because like, people would look at my resume when after I had, you know, I had an MBA from Harvard. And I basically just went back and started doing like research and reading for studios. You know, I worked for Warner Brothers. I started from scratch all over again. People would look at my resume and say, like, what are you doing here? And I'm here because I want to be, because this is a place where I need to be. So, and the reason and ultimately that got me back to writing. And then I got a different kind of training, which was really how, you know, something other than devised theater. But all the physical theater experience that I had absolutely came to play in my writing when I sat down to do something that was a little more, you know, we call traditional playwriting, you know, where I was writing a script and it was just me, because of what I was saying about my interest in the stage and what can be done on a stage, and what can be done on a stage very simply, because that's what I had learned there. What can you do? What can you bring to a stage when it's just you and your body, or you and your body and your scene partner's body, right? Like what shapes can you take? What forms can it, you know? So it was a very circular process over quite a number of years. And the reason I'm telling this long story is just to say, you know, I think that kind of circular journey that happened, as opposed to a journey, you know, like when I was growing up, you'd hear, you know, people go to a company and then they stay at that company for 20 years. And, you know, as we all know, that's not really the case anymore, you know, for anybody. But that was the environment that I came from. And I think the circularity of touching back again on things that you really feel passionate about and that you really love, and and in integrating them with other aspects of your life later is very, I think in particular, very female. That women in their career journeys have a tendency to circle around more. I think I'll take this leap than men. And what you end up with at the end, ideally, is something that's very rich because of all the experiences that you've had that you can pull from different aspects of your life and come back together. So my acting experience absolutely came to play when I became a writer, and specifically the physical theater experience and the devised theater experience all came together. And also because, as we all know, theater is a very collaborative medium, and that's what I was learning from the beginning. How do you be a writer and an actor and a director? And because that's essentially what we were doing, but we didn't have name for it. We didn't know that. We were just told, go make something. Then I found out what it was later. Yeah. It was theater.
Sure. So tell us about your script consultant and for private clients, and tell us more about the script development process that you help your clients with.
Oh, okay. So this is part of, as I was saying, I'm very fascinated by the process of writing. I just love it. I don't know. I never get tired of trying to figure out what the essential elements of a script are, and how to enhance that, either for myself or for the people I'm working with. So I work as a private script consultant. I also work at I'm also a faculty member at the Dramatist Guild Institute, which is the educational arm of the Dramatist Guild, which is the playwrights don't have a union because we own our work. We don't do work for hire. So we have a guild called the Dramatist Guild, and they have an educational arm. So I work for them as well. Is the most important to me when I'm working with somebody is that I'm basically helping them to make their play more their play, to have it go deeper, to have it match their intention more. Should never be, for any of you who are in writers groups or thinking about starting writers groups or wanting to work with somebody or get feedback from your friends, that it should never be, your play should never be what someone else wants it to be. The play should be what you want it to be. So what I work with a lot, what I try to get to a lot, is what is the writer's intention for their play. So it would be like if you were making a cake, a chocolate cake. It's like, how can we make it more chocolatey? Do you want it fudgy, or do you want it a light kind of a cake, or do you, right? So that's a weird analogy I just came up with, but I like that. So the idea is so that's the non-negotiable. It should be the play that the writer wants to write. That maybe they just need some help figuring out how to do that. And then what comes into play is craft, because there are basic craft elements that one always needs to talk about. It doesn't have to be the standard structure that everybody uses, but it needs to have a structure so that the audience knows what to expect and when the play is over. And so what I basically do with my clients is, before we even start, I say, what questions do you have for me? And then as I read their script, I go through it and I make line notes, and I'll ask questions. I'll say where I've laughed. I'll say where I've gotten confused, where I've been thrown off. I'll ask where the play is going, if I start to feel like it's meandering. So I'm giving basically my kind of in the moment response to what I'm reading. I usually do that a couple of times, and then I write endnotes. So I'll write basically a set of pages about what my response is to the characterizations, to the conflict, to the structure, does it have a mounting structure? Do they want it to have a mounting structure? Places where I have questions, places where I think when they go back, they could address certain things. And then I always have a conversation with the writer. Yeah, usually they want to see what I've written beforehand before we have a conversation. Not always, but I think it's more useful because there's so much information that I put on their script, which is all done, and this is all done virtually, that then when we have a conversation, we can kind of get down to the really basic things like, why are you writing this? What's the essential question that you're writing about by writing this play? How does it fit into your other body of work? What do you usually write about? What do you care about? So some people I have one person I've worked with who calls me his play therapist.
Yeah.
Because I ask a lot of questions that someone, that the writer can't necessarily answer on the spot, which is absolutely as it should be. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't, because they need to go back and think about it. Sometimes people get mad because they don't really want me asking those questions. But I feel that that's my job, because that's what's going to help the script break open. Because again, as we were saying before, it's really all about, what do you care about? Why are you writing? If you're just writing the play because you think it's kind of, it'd be a funny idea, I don't really know why I'm writing it, then kind of you're kind of stopped in the water from the beginning, because there needs to be something that you really feel passionate about that carries it through. So I feel like that's my job with my clients, and which means there's still a lot of craft. There's a lot of craft that we discuss. So it's all done in the context of craft, but ultimately what really makes the difference is what's going on inside. And that's my job, I feel, is to help people get to that.
Do you also work with full-length plays? Do you help develop?
That's primarily what I do. Yeah, that's primarily.
Because I know that short plays short play is not easy to make money on and produce, like, let's say on get financing to produce it, but full-length plays pay sometimes. So that's it's not easy to make money writing any plays. So I'm glad.
Full disclosure. Well, I got my MFA at NYU, MFA in dramatic writing at NYU. So that was after everything else I've told you about my life. I went back on MFA. And what they do there, and what I do in a lot of programs, is they have everybody do playwriting, screenwriting, and TV writing. And because some people come in and they want right away, they want to be TV writers or screenwriters. But for God help us, the playwrights, it's kind of a given that your livelihood will not be from writing plays. Your livelihood comes from whatever your other job is, or ideally, as a writer, it could be doing screenwriting, writing films, writing,
or teaching, consulting,
or teaching and consulting. But if you go into playwriting with the idea that you will make money from it, you will be sorely disappointed. Hard to say. There always has to be something else alongside. Generally, it used to be that actually, if you wanted to break in, then short plays is a great way to do that, because you were much more likely to be able to get produced, not necessarily make money from it, but much more likely to get produced with short plays. Since COVID, the short play production environment has definitely contracted. So that, it used to be, I would say, just try writing short plays and you're much more likely to have it done. And I still think that's true. It's just not it's not, the opportunities are not as copious as they were before COVID. And since then, a lot, because theaters have shut down, theaters have decided to, because theaters were getting overwhelmed with too many submissions. So they found ways to cut that down by, saying you have to submit on this theme, you have to or you have to live in this our geographic area, or we're cutting it off at 200 submissions, so you better do it fast, or something like that. So it's harder than it used to be to just get produced in general, I would say, sadly.
How about being paid, writing an adaptation based on your work, adaptation of your work for filmmakers, and basically having filmmakers paying for your work,
for the rights
for adaptation of your play for their films?
Well, that would be very nice. If somebody wants to do that, I'm happy to talk to somebody about it. Now, you have to remember also that if a filmmaker says, I'd like to do an adaptation of your work, then it gets into, well, who's going to write that screenplay? Ideally, I would like to be the one to write the screenplay rather than just sell my rights and have somebody else do it. Because I know how to do that too.
Sure.
But so that, yes, that is a possibility. Again, full length versus short plays. A short play is probably not, a film is, the rights are going to be commensurate with the length of the play. But it's very possible. I have some monologues coming up in a book from Smith and Krause.
Yes,
that's Monologues for Women, right? Best Monologues 2023 for women, and that's all monologues just for women actors.
And can they use monologues for their auditions?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
That's primarily what those kinds of books are designed for, because they're monologues that are made about a minute or so, and they're usually excerpts. They're all excerpts from plays that have been done, and they're designed for actors to use in their auditions. So yes.
And now we can get it. Starting next week, we can get this book from the drama bookstore.
Now that book, the Smith and Krause book, has not come out yet.
Okay.
My book, Raw and Other Short Plays, will be at the drama bookstore starting next week.
Good. Thank you for explaining. Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I want the link for that book as well.
Okay.
So cool. And
well, if you go on my website, everything's on my website. So there are links to how to get all of the books. Should have everything on there.
Awesome. Yeah, your website is like pretty much has everything about your work and you and your past work, your upcoming work. So it's like very easy to navigate. So my next question, sure, this is the perfect, because I like when I interview people and they kind of have everything in one place, because it makes it so easy to make my research and to share with other people. Now I want to ask you how people can start and run their own groups, because I know you're helping with that too, because you are running your own group, Ninth Floor, right?
My own writers group. Yes. So the story of Ninth Floor, the Ninth Floor is now in its 16th season. So I've been running it for over 15 years. So the way people can start their own group, well, maybe I should tell you, would it make sense to talk a little bit about what we do in that group, and then I can.
Please, yes, sure.
Okay, so it's a group. We meet weekly. It used to be that for years and years I lived in New York. I no longer live in New York, as you can see behind me.
Yeah, beautiful.
I live in New England, but I wanted a group that kind of like-minded people who I trusted, who could come together and read work out loud, and we could give each other feedback in a safe environment. And so I used to run this out of my apartment in New York, and I lived on the 9th floor. another member of the group who would occasionally host when I couldn't, also lived on the 9th floor. So it became, we started calling it the 9th floor. And what we do is we meet once a week. Now we do it virtually. Starting with COVID, we started meeting virtually. And so now we have people from, not just from New York. I'm not in New York anymore. We have people as far away as California who come in. And so we have writers who are part of it. We have actors who are part of it. And the idea is I send out an email on Friday. We meet on Wednesday night. So I send out an email on Fridays asking people who's going to come. The writers can ask to have a slot. The actors say, yes, I'm coming. And depending on how many writers want, we have 5 slots available. I basically assign the slots by Monday. Each slot is half an hour. So a writer has half an hour in which to hear their pages and ask questions. So the writer asks the questions. But what it means within that half an hour, a writer can bring in 20 pages and talk for 10 minutes, or bring in 10 pages, talk for 20 minutes, whatever combination they like. And it's very oriented towards the writer. So basically what the format is, we meet at 6:30. Everybody meets at 6:30. The writers cast from the available actors. The actors go read their pages for half an hour. We come back at 7 o'clock. This is all Eastern time for those who are on the West Coast. And then we just go through and read pages, and the writers ask their questions. What I always encourage the writers to do is to ask open-ended questions rather than questions that have a yes or no answer. So rather than saying, does that section work? Does the ending work? What you'll get is an opinion. Yes, it works. No, it doesn't. But it's not necessarily craft-based, right? So, but if you say, I've been working on, tell me about the conflict between these two characters. That's what I've been working on. Or how, even what was your feeling at the end, at that ending? Or something that's an open-ended question that doesn't have a yes or no answer. You get lots more information, and then you can pair that information up against what your own intention was. How did you want the audience to feel at the end? What was the conflict about between Jack and Susan? You may discover that people are unclear about what that conflict was, or they may have a different feeling at the ending than you intended. So all that information is really valuable. You may say, oh, you know what? I didn't realize that ending made people feel that way, but I actually like that. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So you get a basket of information when you ask an open-ended question. And so I always encourage the writers to come in with a set of questions beforehand, rather than say, just give me your feedback, because you'll get something vague, right? Or you can. I mean, like, when you worked with a group for a very long time, like I have, we kind of know what we're expected to say to each other. So a lot of those specifics kind of get jumped over because people already know to talk about the conflict or the characterization or places where they got confused or whatever. But still, even 15 years down the road, I'm still encouraging people to ask a question in an open-ended fashion, because it's just much more beneficial to them. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. And then we go until, start at 6:30, we go until 9:30, and I'm very careful also about making sure that a half an hour is really a half an hour, unless we've contracted to do 2 or something like that, because I feel we have very wonderful actors, and I feel that give us their time. And I feel that it's very important to respect the time, not the time of the actors as well as the writers. So there's structure around it, which I think is always super important. I always think you need structure in order to bloom, to go crazy, to be creative. So in terms of how to start, now I should say anybody who's interested in learning, wanting to do a writers group, that's the structure that we've created over the years for this particular group. I know other groups who do their structures in other kinds of ways. For us, it really works, and we've created a community around it. And the way to create your own is to ask people who you really trust. That's the main thing, because again, this is about, you want people to give you feedback that's honest about what they received, but you don't want them writing your play for you.
Right.
So you need a leader who is very adamant about that if somebody wants to jump in and start saying and saying, really, I think this character should do this, cut him off. So find people that you trust, who you enjoy working with. Some people feel that they can do writers groups just with other writers, because if the writers are decent readers, you can still hear a lot. We love having actors, wonderful actors to come in, and because we also find things in our work that we didn't know were there when you have wonderful actors reading. And the actors are really helpful in terms of giving feedback as well, because they're inside the characters. So their points of view are really useful. So I think it's great to have writers and actors in, but you can just do writers. And if you're not sure where to go find a like-minded group, you can go take a class. People now, and also this can all be done virtually. So as ours is being done virtually. So you can go to a local class if you don't have a theater community yet. But you can also, like, for example, the Dramatist Guild Institute has lots of classes, and I think there are writers groups that have come out of that, virtual writers groups. So find your community, and then if you're someone who is activist and really feels the need for this, as say I did, create a group. Ask some people who you really like to join you and hear each other's pages, and be honest but kind and supportive about each other's work.
Thank you so much. So please share out your website and social media so people can find more about your work. It's
victoriazdaly.com. I think it'll be right.
It will be in the card.
So my stage, the name I write under is Victoria Z Daly, D-A-L-Y. So victoriazdaly.com. And I'm on Instagram.
Instagram
as @vzdaly. I'm no longer on what used to be Twitter.
Okay, so sounds good, no problem. And thank you so much for being with me for this hour. And I enjoyed the conversation, and I'm happy to reunion with you and see you again, even though it's still on Zoom, which I appreciate highly, because we're all Zoom people now, right?
Sure.
So, appreciate you.
Thank you, Elena. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Bye, Vicky.
Bye-bye. Thanks again.
It's Elena with Boost Your Creativity and Bank Account with Elena. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, EDC World Inc., so I can invite more creative and successful people to share their story. Have a nice day.